They're already 2 rounds deep at the Arnold Palmer Invitational at Bay Hill, and our New York Post sports columnist Mark Cannizzaro is on now with all the storylines and all the action coming out of this weekend's tournament. Mark, before we even get into what's going on right now, we got to ask you this question. How are the players responding to the 17th hole now that they've removed that infamous beach bunker?
Well, yesterday in the Thursday opening round, there was a lot of wind there, so that was wreaking havoc. I think it was the highest, it was the most difficult playing hole on the course. Um, for our viewers, essentially what they did at 17, because it was a maintenance issue, they kind of the front right of that green, they had a almost like a beachfront sand trap there that went right into the to a to a small lake, and that was a little bit of a safety valve because players don't mind playing out of that stuff. But they've taken that away now, and then it's just the water goes right up to the bank of the green, and it's a little bit more of an intimidating look for the players. It'll be interesting to see how the week unfolds. Obviously, we're in round two today, but yesterday there was some major issues. In fact, one of the players who was really having a nice round, this Jersey kid Greiseman, he went into the 17 at 3 under par, and like it looked like he was trying to stay away from the water so much it was like an amateur, or he yanked it like 40 yards to the left and went out of bounds. So it's more of an intimidating look, and I think at the end of the week you'll see that the stats will show that it's playing a lot more difficult than it usually does.
All right, that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. A lot of people are talking about Xander Schauffele, who kind of took his first swing on a PGA Tour course in 57 days when he returned on Thursday, but he struggled in his return. Mark, do you think he's going to make the cut?
I don't see that happening. I just was looking at the numbers. I think he was one over for the day today, so he was at six over. I think the cut's four. Listen, he's still early in his round, and it's possible he can make it. This is a difficult returning spot for Xander. Obviously, he won two major championships last year, and he had this adductor issue, kind of like a rib situation that kept him out until just now. So he kind of returns to the fray to the Arnold Palmer in Bay Hill, which is already a difficult playing golf course for the pros. And then you add on top of that like 30-mile-an-hour winds yesterday, so it was a pretty good smack in the face for him to get back into play. But listen, he still can make the cut. It's early in his round, as I said. The last I looked, he was one over for the day after shooting five over. I think the cut line is sitting at about four, but the conditions today are not as difficult as they were yesterday, so I can see that cut line maybe creeping up to three. So Xander will he's got some work to do to get inside the number before the end of the day.
Another return everyone's excited to watch is Wyndham Clark being back. He's had a strong 2 rounds to start the tournament. As we know, he was inches away from winning it all last year, but he had to settle for second behind Scottie Scheffler. Is this Wyndham's tourney to win this year?
It's way too early in the tournament to say that, Brandon. But you're right. I mean, he finished runner up to Scottie Scheffler both here at API and at the Players Championship the following week. So and as you said, it was within inches. So he was in really good form. Had a pretty good year last year with a win. But this course is very much an equalizer. You got all the top names on the PGA Tour playing this week. He is up at the top of the leaderboard. I think right now with Shane Lowry, who's playing really well. He's sneaking up. Rory's won here before at Bay Hill, so it's really nobody's tournament. But he's in good form, and that's a good sign.
API kicked off Scottie Scheffler's run last year. Do you think that he's like due for an encore this year? Like, what can we expect from Scottie Scheffler?
Scotty Brandon is so steady. Um, I expect a similar year this year that I saw out of him last year. I mean, he's just very, very flat line, very comfortable with his game, comfortable in his skin. Pressure doesn't get to him. A lot of guys who are number one in the world ranked, which he is and has been for a while, that becomes a burden for them. It's a ball and chain around their ankle. Scotty is just, he's unaffected, and by that. So and he's obviously plays very well at API where he's a multiple winner. So I expect him to play. I mean, I gotta. If I was predicting, I'd say he'd probably win at least a major this year, which is a pretty bold statement because it's hard to win majors and the competition is stiff. But he's that good, and I could see him. I mean, I'd be shocked if he's not right in the mix of the Masters next month.
We got API this weekend, the Players Championship next weekend. Then, there's just months of just great tournaments. How big is this next couple of months for PGA?
Well, it's big. I wrote a piece in today's post for our Post Sports Plus just about the divide between the PGA Tour and Live and the Saudi backed Live Tour. And because you got so many top players over on the Live Tour that people want to see competing against the Rory McIlroys and the Schefflers and Wyndham Clarks, as you say here, and we just talked about. And the PGA Tour is struggling a little bit because fans are ticked off about the divide. Not that it's all the PGA Tour's fault; it's everybody's fault. But I think that you want big name winners in the big events. I think that's what draws the fans to the action more. The PGA Tour got that after a very kind of slow start with a couple of no names, no offense, winning some early tournaments this year. But Rory went and won at Pebble Beach, which was a big deal. I mean, that's a big name at an iconic venue, and the PGA Tour needs more of that to gain some momentum here because a lot of times, quite frankly, the fans are looking up at these leaderboards and they don't know. They're like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? Who's that guy? And like all sports, it's a star-driven league and tour, and people want to see the top names up there. So we're about to embark on a run here. I'll be at the Players Championship next week down at TPC Sawgrass. You got the Masters coming up in April, and then with the major run, you got the PGA Championship in Quail Hollow in Charlotte, and then the U.S. Open and the British Open. So you want the cream to rise to the top. That's what's going to make the game more sexy, if you will, and draw more eyeballs to the TV.
All right, Mark, thanks for your time today.
Anytime, Brandon. Thanks, man.